Well, good morning, everyone here and those joining us online. Wow, glad you guys made it through the storm. I was waiting all morning for a storm. Didn't seem to come. Well, it did now, yeah, kind of. Anyway, just some highlights from the announcements. Just next Sunday, Bring and Share with Aaron Morash. And I think that's pretty much it. There's a list of the speakers that we're going to get for March, and you might want to look forward to what's happening at Easter. We're going to do a service on Maundy Thursday, and then another one on Easter Sunday morning, and that will be a Bring and Share breakfast. And I think that's pretty much it for announcements on this. Okay, Bruce, lead us in worship. In the scripture passages that Dr. Lillian Daniel has selected for our worship this morning, Proverbs 31, I'm not sure if any of you have checked what those passages say or have read them in preparation for the service this morning. But anyway, Proverbs 31 is titled in some Bibles, Wife of Noble Character. And in it we find a celebration of the virtues and the qualities that the author says defines a noble woman. And then, if we go on to Mark 9, we have an interesting conversation between Jesus and the disciples. And it's where the disciples are arguing about the definition of being a noble character in terms of who is the greatest disciple. And so both Proverbs and the Mark passage underscore the importance of service and selflessness. The Proverbs passage with the woman serving her household with quite a bit of diligence and energy, as we'll hear from our speaker as well. And then in the Mark passage where Jesus notes the ultimate act of love is a willingness to serve others. And so as we worship this morning, may our hearts be open to the transformative powers that we experience through what Jesus offers us. Let us draw inspiration from the woman in Proverbs 31, and maybe strive to be the disciples' greatest, or Christ's greatest disciples, committing ourselves to the profound act of serving others in love. Our call to worship this morning, loosely based on the Proverbs and the Mark passage, invites us to accept God's direction. And I invite you to read the dark print with me. Our world offers many wide avenues and beautiful boulevards to walk. Our God invites us to walk the road of service and sacrifice. Our society suggests we put down our roots in the shallow soil of pleasure and greed. Our God seeks to plant us on the banks of hope, watered by the rivers of joy and grace. Our culture promotes achievement, success, climbing to the top, ringing the bell. Our God tells us if we want to be first, we need to go to the end of the line. Please bow with me in prayer. As we gather this morning in this place of worship, we come with hearts full of gratitude. We thank you, Lord, for the privilege of worship, for the opportunity to gather as a community of believers. Lord, as we join our voices in word and in song and prayer, we ask that you'd inspire us with a willingness to participate in your kingdom. Just as Christ came not to be served, but to serve, may we embody that same selfless attitude in our worship and in our presence as members of your kingdom. Bless our worship with the presence of your Spirit. Amen. And thank you, Yolanda and Ruth, for filling in.
Good morning. Let's stand, sing 36 in our purple hymnals, Let Us Build a House. Let us build a house where love can dwell and all can safely live, a place where saints and children dwell, our hearts learn to forgive, built of hopes and dreams and visions, rock of faith and vault of grace, here the love of Christ shall end divisions. All are welcome, all are welcome, all are welcome in this place. Let us build a house where prophets speak and words are strong and true, where all God's children dare to seek to dream God's reign on you. Here the cross shall stand as witness and a symbol of God's grace. Here as one we claim the faith of Jesus. All are welcome, all are welcome, all are welcome in this place. Let us build a house where love is found in water, wine, and wheat, a banquet hall on holy ground where peace and justice meet. Here the love of God through Jesus is revealed in time and space, as we share in Christ the least that frees us all. Come Thou Fount is an old one that we've sung many times, so that's 563. Come thou fount of every blessing, tune my heart to sing thy grace. Streams of mercy never ceasing, call for songs of loudest praise. Teach me some melodious sonnet, sung by flaming tongues above. Praise the mount I'm fixed upon it, mount of God's unchanging love. Here I raise my Ebenezer, hither by thy help I'm come, and I hope by thy good pleasure safely to arrive at home. Jesus sought me when a stranger, wandering from the fold of God. He to rescue me from danger interposed his precious blood. Oh, to grace how great a debtor daily I'm constrained to be. Let that grace now like a fetter bind my wandering heart to thee. Prone to wander, Lord, I feel it, prone to leave the God I love. Here's my heart, oh, take and seal it for thy courts above. Have a seat.
Children's time. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 children here. No? Some of us are orphans though, but does that still mean we're children? A word I've heard quite rarely, but sometimes, is the word goat. And I'm not sure if you've heard that used lately or not. Children, any responses? Goat? You've heard goat? Every day? In what sense have you heard that?
We describe our favorite musicians.
You define musicians as goats, as in
The greatest of all time.
the greatest of all time. Exactly. That was supposed to be the big question. So what does that mean? I didn't know musicians could be acclaimed as greatest of all time. Interesting. Any other greatest of all timers? Right on. That's exactly the one. And this past week, I'm not sure if you watched the curling the week before with the ladies, and Jennifer Jones has been acclaimed as a goat by some people as well. Not sure if there's others or not that you think of that are goats? None? If you want to go back a year further, that's a gal by the name of Serena Williams was acclaimed as a goat as well in tennis. Pretty awesome player. That's one I thought Bella would mention, but anyway, goats. So the Mark story today talks about goats as well, and the disciples are trying to figure out who of them would be the greatest. And when I was thinking about that during this week, I thought, so do we have like 14 disciples here as well, and many online as well. Thank you for joining us. So how many of us would qualify as goats? We could put up a few pictures, just maybe remind you. So we have a few pictures of people that have been helping us with our worship of the last 2 Sundays. And I'm not sure if this duet would qualify as a goat couple, or as either of them would qualify as goats. But anyway, we have another gentleman that helps us with our worship and Sunday school and all kinds of other things. Is he a goat disciple, or how would he work? Then we have another lady that does do quite a bit of discipleship within the congregation and could qualify as a goat maybe. There's a few others. One that's arisen behind the pulpit of late is this young gentleman here, who's showing us his wonderful skills at being a disciple and trying to become a goater or whatever. This young lady as well has all kinds of things. She doesn't just sit behind the piano. She actually memorizes stories or internalizes stories and does all kinds of visitation and stuff. Great disciple as well. Great, for sure. Greatest? Not sure. This young gentleman has been quite committed to helping us with all kinds of things in Sunday school and with the children, with worship leading as well. So another great disciple to have as part of our congregation. I'm not sure, is that all? All I had was, I think, 6. I couldn't get to 7 because we didn't have a picture of the musicians from 2 Sundays ago, so didn't get you on, sorry. But anyway, how do you decide the question of who is the greatest? So if you go back to the story with Mark and with Jesus and the disciples, Jesus sits down with the disciples, and what does he do? He brings in this little child and actually picks up the child and says, hey, you know, when you look at how our society treats children, if you want to be the greatest, then you need to accept this child and share the love that I'm sharing with you with this child.
All right, let's continue singing. The whole choir here. Please stand if you can. Will you let me be your servant? I guess goats are servants, right? 778.
Will you let me be your servant? Let me be as Christ to you. Pray that I may have the grace to let you be my servant too. We are pilgrims on a journey. We are travelers on the road. We are here to help each other walk the mile and bear the load. I will hold the Christ light for you in the night time of your fear. I will hold my hand out to you, speak the peace you long to hear. I will weep when you are weeping, when you laugh, I'll laugh with you. I will share your joy and sorrow till we've seen this journey through. When we sing to God in heaven, we shall find such harmony, born of all we've known together, of Christ's love and agony. Will you let me be your servant? Let me be as Christ to you. Pray that I may have the grace to let you be my servant too.
722 is Help Us to Help Each Other. We're singing it with a different melody in the blue hymnal, 362, if you're wanting the notes. Otherwise, it is 722 in our purple hymnal, but it's a familiar melody.
Help us to help each other, Lord, each other's load to bear, that all may live in true Drawn by the magnet of your love, we find our hearts made new. Nearer each other let us move, and nearer still to you.
Have a seat.
The two scriptures that what's the name? Reverend Daniel will be speaking about, Proverbs 31, 10 to 31. I thought at first I wasn't going to read them. She does refer to them quite a bit, but I thought, maybe I should read them as well. So this is the epilogue of the wife of noble character. A wife of noble character, who can find? She is worth far more than rubies. Her husband has full confidence in her and lacks nothing of value. She brings him good, not harm, all the days of her life. She selects wool and flax and works with eager hands. She is like the merchant ships, bringing her food from afar. She gets up while it is still night. She provides food for her family and portions for her female servants. She considers a field and buys it. Out of her earnings, she plants a vineyard. She sets about her work vigorously. Her arms are strong for her tasks. She sees that her trading is profitable, and her lamp does not go out at night. In her hands, she holds the distaff and grasps the spindle with her fingers. She opens her arms to the poor and extends her hands to the needy. When it snows, she has no fear for her household, for all of them are clothed in scarlet. Oops. She makes coverings for her bed. She is clothed in fine linen and purple. Her husband is respected at the city gate, where he takes his seat among the elders of the land. She makes linen garments and sells them, and supplies the merchants with sashes. She is clothed with strength and dignity. She can laugh at the days to come. She speaks with wisdom, and faithful instruction is on her tongue. She watches over the affairs of her household and does not eat the bread of idleness. Her children arise and call her blessed. Her husband also, and he praises her. Many women do noble things, but you surpass them all. Charm is deceptive, and beauty is fleeting, but a woman who fears the Lord is to be praised. And then the Mark 9 reading, 1 to 11. They left that place and passed through Galilee. Jesus did not want anyone to know where they were, because he was teaching his disciples. He said to them, "The Son of Man is going to be delivered into the hands of men. They will kill him. And after 3 days he will rise." But they did not understand what he meant and were afraid to ask him about it. They came to Capernaum. When he was in the house, he asked them, "So what were you guys arguing about on the road?" They kept quiet, because on the way they had argued about who was the greatest. Sitting down, Jesus called the 12 and said, "Anyone who wants to be the first must be the very last and the servant of all." He took a little child, whom he placed among them. Taking the child in his arms, he said to them, Whoever welcomes one of these little children in my name welcomes me. And whoever welcomes me does not welcome me, but the one who sent me." May the Lord bless the reading of his word, and we'll ask Rebecca and Brent to put the video up for us.
may be seated. I bring you greetings from Dubuque, Iowa. You laugh. I met a few Duke alumni around town. I'm staying downtown. You have a beautiful city, the Durham Hotel. It has a beautiful rooftop bar, and apparently that's one of the meeting places for the alumni. And as I've met people, they say, well, what are you doing here? And I explain that I'm the preacher for this Sunday. When they ask me where I'm from, I say Iowa, and they go, how did you get here? They let us out sometimes. Like, we're not forced to stay. I hitched my horse to my buggy and I made the trip. The Bible is a collection of books. It is a library that was put together at different points in history. Different decisions were made about what would be in it and what would be left out. And so we have two readings this morning. I hope I do not offend you when I admit what I think we all know. It is a collection of books of varying quality and depth. There is the book of Proverbs, and then there is the story from the Gospel of Mark. What one lacks in profundity, the other carries extra weight. Let's talk a little bit about the book of Proverbs. It is not my favorite book in the Bible. A proverb is a simple and practical saying, popularly repeated, that expresses an obvious truth about a common sense experience. In other words, not particularly interesting. A stitch in time saves 9. You ask yourself sometimes as you read the book of Proverbs, did all this really need to get into the Bible? It is a collection of books. But wisdom literature, the genre of the book of Proverbs, includes the Song of Songs that I don't feel I could live without. Ecclesiastes is also wisdom literature. And then we have Proverbs, stuff people already agree with, listed with semi-religious profundity. Expert advice. To me, the categories are numerous. In Proverbs, you have the proverb that expresses the patently obvious. Wine is a mocker. Beer is a brawler. Happy homecoming, by the way. Here's another sort of obvious one. Even a fool is thought wise if he keeps silent. Or if you're comfortable with a more modern translation, even a fool is thought wise if he stops tweeting. They do connect to our lives. But often, a proverb does not connect immediately because it presumes a way of life that we no longer live. It presumes even a way of life or practices that we consider to be backwards. Like this one. As a dog returneth to his vomit, so a fool returneth to his folly. In these enlightened days, we discourage that in dogs. There's another type of proverb, the proverb that I call untrue and yet oddly depressing, like this one. Train up a child in the way he should go, and when he is old, he shall not depart from it. Untrue and depressing. There is also a lot of this sort of self-referential tautology, i.e., the wisdom of having wisdom, or wisdom literature about the value of wisdom literature. Here's one. Wisdom is supreme, therefore get wisdom. God helps those who help themselves. It is not one of the 10 Commandments. It is not actually anywhere in the Bible. But if it were, it would probably be in the book of Proverbs. And then lastly, there is that sort of sentimental greeting card material that if you excerpt it from its surrounding context, you really could put it in a card. Like this. Who can find a virtuous woman? For her price is far above rubies. Oh. Proverbs is full of the kind of commonly accepted lowest common denominator wisdom of the day that later Jesus will turn upside down. The way I look at it, Proverbs, some of it helpful, some of it not, is like the Oprah of the Bible. Listen to the reading. A capable wife who can find? She is far more precious than jewels because she's on the same list as jewelry, because that time she was herself probably a form of property. She seeks wool and flax. She rises while it is still night and provides food for her household and tasks for her servant girls. She provides a little midnight snack for her husband and tasks for her servants' girls. Hey, go get my husband a snack. She opens her hands to the poor, reaches out to the needy. She is a kind and well-known generous person because her husband has enough money to set her up with her own charitable 501c3. Because her husband is known at the city gates, as his wife is known, with many seats on the boards of local museums. She laughs at the time to come when she knows her husband will tell the same off-color joke he always tells after he's had a few drinks, because she is good in that way. Her husband, therefore, praises her. Her children rise up and call her happy. Her children rise up without alarm clocks, bursting forth from their already made beds, showered and dressed for school. Her husband, too, and he praises her. Many women have done excellently, but you surpass them all. Charm is deceitful, beauty is vain, but a woman who fears the Lord is to be praised. Honey, you really are the greatest piece of property that I own. Do you remember the old television ad for the perfume Enjoli? It had a glamorous woman dancing around in a business suit, wielding a frying pan in one hair, big gold earrings. She sang, "Enjoli, because I'm a woman, I can bring home the bacon, fry it up in a pan, and never let you forget you're a man. The 8-hour perfume for the 24-hour woman." Which always left me confused. I was like, why didn't they just make it a 24-hour perfume? In this moment in history, at least here in this country, I think many of us feel that respect for women and their experiences is at a deep, deep low. So many of the advances toward equality that we thought we had made seem to have been unraveled in recent years. For parents of daughters, we were once hopeful for a world that would be different from the one that we experienced, and now many of us shake our heads wondering if it is getting worse. And so this long, sentimental paean to the capable and perfect wife who knows her place, who does what she is told. It rings as sincere as the most powerful male elder in the country saying, "Of course, women like that should be heard." For every woman who has ever felt judged against an unfair list, this is one of those lists from another time when these things were not questioned. If wisdom literature in the book of Proverbs can sometimes seem a bit simplistic, it was probably just right for Jesus' followers who never seemed to get the depth that was right in front of them. Jesus' followers are really us, right? The questions they ask, the ridiculous things they say, it's meant to turn our hearts inward and to think of our own obtuseness. We like things like Proverbs because we don't want too much complication. We like aphorisms and bumper stickers. We like them until they do not work, until they turn out to describe nobody real. Then they betray us, or leave us feeling like we're the only one in the room listening to the list and thinking, I don't measure up. Then we come to this gospel reading, this story from Mark. And this is great because the disciples are at their densest in this story. It says right up front, Jesus knows that he is going to die soon. He is trying to convey this to them. And what are they doing? The irony is they don't get it that he's going to be gone soon. Instead, they are arguing about which one of them is the greatest. Which one of them? It's a low bar. It's a race to the bottom. Jesus is talking here and trying to talk about the meaning of life and what does it mean to be a human being created in God's image. And they're disputing like little brats about who's the greatest. And Jesus knows his time is short. And he's got to be having those very human doubts. Like, I picked these guys? Like, these guys are going to be entrusted with everything? So, as he ponders this, as he wonders if he needs a better group, as he wonders whether he has time to start again, and then realizes this is what he has, that one day their names will be on top of their own books, read out loud in churches. This is all he has. He's got to get to him. And so as they're fighting and whining and trying to get ahead, he says, all right, look, he goes out and he picks up a little child. And you have to understand that if women were treated like property in many cases here, children were in such a different category. I mean, with the dangers of childbirth, with the dangers of childhood illnesses, some historians say that people were almost afraid to bond with their own children until they got to be about 6 years old because so many of them didn't make it. And so Jesus then interrupts his male disciples and says, look, here's this kid who I'm bringing in the circle, and whoever welcomes anybody like this welcomes me. And Jesus here is turning upside down all the lists of what makes a powerful man and what makes a wonderful woman. And he's saying, here's a human being who is so small and young, they've not yet accomplished anything. That's me. This is what you can aspire to. Because you adults, you feuding adults are so far gone. You're so stuck in your own egos. You are so sure that you have to be better than somebody else. You're better than the women. You're better than the Gentiles. You're better than the oxen and the animals. You're even better than the children you barely consider to be human. You have this transactional, competitive, meager world in which you fight for the scraps over nothing that ultimately matters. You are missing the fact that in a few days I will be gone. You have missed the fact that I've been here, God with you. You're going to wonder one day, did we miss our greatest shot at being human right here with God? When we were too busy commodifying and ranking each other? He takes a child, he says, this is what it means to be a human being. In a world in which women are treated with profound disrespect, their experiences dismissed, a country divided as to how we understand these issues. We also have a growing movement of youth who are challenging the whole gender construct, claiming to have never felt they were one or the other, rejecting the binary. Some switch from one to another. They change their names. And people freak out. I can't call you that name. I'm always going to think of you as Bob. I cannot call you Susan. It's just not grammatical. It's just too hard for me. You know what's hard? Childbirth. You know what's hard? Losing your house in a flood. You know what's hard? Getting shot at. You know what's not that hard? Calling somebody by their name. And in the Bible, there is this amazing pushback on itself. Sometimes it's Jesus, sometimes it's the very words, this pushing back against the list, the hierarchy, the binaries. And by the way, in the Bible, has anyone noticed? People change their names all the time. Saul becomes Paul. Abram becomes Abraham. And nobody follows Paul around the rest of the Bible saying, you know, I just can't call you anything but Saul. It's just really difficult for me. You're going to have to accept that. I can't. The challenges to the binaries of gender, to the practices, to the divisions between male and female that we live with today. Maybe there is a connection between all that change and then this sense that women are in this disrespected place. But within that change and those shifts, I feel like I see Jesus. And when people are arguing about what to call people, he picks up a child and says, this is what it means to be human. When people debate gay marriage, when they say it threatens the institution of marriage, I'm baffled by that. When you ask, how does that affect your marriage exactly? They're like, well, you know, it doesn't really affect my marriage per se, but I'm uncomfortable with it. Okay, then don't get gay married. You see this child? This is a human being. I was preaching at the Anglican Cathedral in Vancouver. They have almost as many processions as you guys. I couldn't help but be shocked as I read the instructions for today's service. And they mentioned on page 43 that I would be behind the cross and in front of torches. I was like, torches? That's kind of scary. They clarified, well, they're really candles. It's okay, that's better, because I was like, which group carries the pitchforks? It's always a little discombobulating when you are part of a high church, beautiful worship service like this, and you don't really know what you are doing. And that was the case for me with the Anglicans from Vancouver. They said, oh, we'll just do things the way you always do. It will all be clear. It was not. I just subserviently followed somebody around who carried a giant cross and did whatever they did. I think my role there was assistant cross follower. I did have the pleasure of distributing the communion, and as people came up for communion, I passed out the bread, and one gentleman took it and then went down, and then I noticed he was coming back again for seconds. And I'm looking at the Anglicans like, give me my cue here. Is this like an Anglican thing, a Canadian thing? Do you come twice? What do you do? You're just going to be generous, right? Okay. But as I prepare to give him the communion, he reaches into his own pocket and begins to pull out pieces of candy and chocolate and place them in my hands. And he says, you were so kind as to give something to me. I wanted to come back and give something to you. Do you like chocolate? And I said, I do, thank you, as I put it in my pocket. And then he pulled out more. I said, you know who really likes chocolate? The bishop. Yes. You want to know how to love me, Jesus says? Look at this child, free from all your hierarchies, your status, your judging, your lists. Because ultimately it feels miserable to be judged up against these lists of unreality. When we feel disrespected, it is often because the terms are not fair, we didn't get the material in time, how could we study for the test? It's like the recurring nightmare I have where I always open a blue book and I'm being tested in a language I do not know. The unfairness of it, the humiliation, the failure. When I think of that, when I think of the ways in which even the church participates in that by creating an idolatry of the perfect family where everybody has a good and wonderful wife and everybody's children are taught well so that they do never stray from it. I mean, does anybody have children like that? When I think of times in my own life where I have felt like a failure against those lists, those standards, I remember this. I was going through a time of vocational crisis and sadness, and I was wandering around the streets of Madison, Wisconsin, trying to get to a worship service. And there I found myself on a corner that was marked Madison's Happiest Corner. It was a liquor store. And I was not in a happy mood. But I was going to go to church. But as I went, one of the amazing things about university towns, you know this, is that you'll have musicians of incredible quality who'll just be playing on the streets. And so everywhere you go, you're hearing these people who are studying music at these amazing schools. And so I walked by this one little girl, and she's a kid, and she's playing the violin. And she wasn't that good. So she had her case open, but you know, in Madison, like, you've got these outstanding violinists and clarinet players and drum players all over the place, and she's kind of sawing away on this little violin. And I looked at her case, and it didn't really have any money in it, just a few coins, and I felt bad for her. But I was late for church, so somebody else was going to have to support the arts. I kept going. By the time I got to the church, apparently I was late, the doors were closed, so then what would I do? Well, Madison's Happiest Corner beckoned. I went back that direction, and as I was walking toward the little girl sawing away unprofitably on her small instrument, a man stepped in front of me and began to speak in a hushed, urgent whisper. He said, "I need you to take this and put it in that little girl's violin case." And it was a $1 bill. Put it in her violin case? He said, "Yes, just do this for me." His back was to her, and he said, "Don't draw attention to yourself. Just take this. Can you just do this for me and put it in the little girl's violin case? And whatever you do, do not tell her who gave it to you." And then I realized this had to be the girl's father. It had to be. It was so touching. And as I walked up toward the little girl and I dropped the money in, she nodded as though she was entitled to it. She kept playing. And as I walked away, I just felt so good about what I had done. I wanted to go back to the man and ask him for more money to give her. So I just felt so good about myself, you know? I was like that generous wife in Proverbs. But then the cynic in me got going, the anxious little wheels in the brain. Wait, what if he was not her father? What if this was some evil predator? What if I had just subjected this child to some kind of stranger danger setup? And then I thought, no. Only a father would do that. And as we're judging each other against impossible lists and feeling wanting, I think of Jesus taking the most unaccomplished and powerless one there, a little kid, and saying, "You need to welcome this child like you welcomed me." I think of God looking down on all of us with our empty violin cases. You remember the past when your violin case was full, and how when you look back, you realize that you assumed that violin case was full because you were that good a violin player. And suddenly it is empty. And God does not like to see an empty violin case. So God calls a stranger and says, "Go up there. Take this thing of value, this blessing, this gift, and you give it to that unhappy person over there. But don't ever tell them it was from me." I wanted to run up to the little girl and grab her and say, "Do you realize how lucky you are? Somebody invisible loves you and always has." Amen.
Well, as Ken would say sometimes, any thoughts or reflections or words after those words from Dr. Daniel?
One of the reasons I chose this particular one is, what Jesus is basically saying is that the question of greatest is really a bad question. But our egos are so, even this morning, I'll admit my own ego. When you put my face up there, I felt awkward, of course. And then I felt awkward silence with it. And then Pam's face showed up, and I heard somebody say, "Oh, yes." And boy, was my ego way down. Even though I would agree, yeah, Pam's a great, but it's right there. And that's my fight, and I think others have that as well.
Well, John, we're going to be studying a book in adult Sunday school about the Dalai Lama and his approach to happiness and how you can get rid of your ego through studying his ways. So, chapter by chapter, you'll be able to dial it back.
All right.
Well, my apologies for putting you in that awkward spot. I felt kind of bad that Curtis was the one that knew about goat, and I felt kind of bad that I didn't have a picture up of you at least, but anyway.
See how our egos go? Like you have to apologize that you didn't stroke our egos.
Right, yeah.
There was no picture of me up there.
Well, you haven't been up here for the last 2 weeks, so only those that were up, you had to sort of, the bar was fairly low, but you had to cross that and get up here.
And none of you, Jake.
I haven't been up here in the last 2 weeks. So that was the defining line, like you can't be a goat unless you come to the front. Anyway, prayer concerns? Well, let's bow in prayer. Gracious, loving God, we come to you this morning with hearts that need to be opened to your words and to your love. There's a lot around us that tears us apart. We ask that we would be ever mindful of your presence and that we'd be mindful of the hope that you've given us in your Son. We ask that you'd guide us as your disciples, as members of your kingdom, that you'd keep us focused on the mission, on your mission, on the ministry that you've called us to do. We ask, Lord, that you'd hear our prayers for all who need your tender touch, a touch of healing. There are many names that each of us have in our heads about who needs some kind of a touch from either us or from you. And we ask that you would encourage and help us with being that touch. This morning, too, we mourn with those who, we think of those who mourn. We think of the many deaths that are happening in Gaza and in the Ukraine, and there are so many other countries where violence and death are so prevalent. We ask, Lord, that you'd guide and inspire our leaders, that this world might truly be as you created it, a world of peace, a world of hope, and a world of love. These are our prayers. Amen.
We'll be singing number 585 for our sending song in the Purple Hymnals. Faith begins by letting go. Please stand.
Faith begins by letting go, giving up what seems so sure, taking risks and pressing on, though the way they'll feel secure. Pilgrimage both right and odd, trusting all our life to God. Faith endures by holding on, keeping memory roots alive, so that hope may bear its fruit. Promise fed our souls will thrive, not through merit we possess, but by God's great faithfulness. Faith matures by reaching out, stretching minds, enlarging hearts, sharing struggles, living prayer, binding up the broken parts, till we find the commonplace, ripe with witness to God's grace.
And Lord, As we go from here, grant us strength and humility to serve with joy, knowing that in doing so, we mirror your love and your grace. Go with God.